Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I didn't realize you were waiting for me.
Yeah. So, where would you like to begin? Your family has been in Falls Village for several generations.
Since the Depression.
Since the Depression.
My great-grandparents, Martin and Mary Murray, brought their two daughters, Arlene and Eleanor, to Falls Village, believe it or not, from Hartford for a job. There were no jobs in Hartford. Yes. There's my great-grandmother, Mary Murray, my grandmother, Arlene Fife, my great-grandfather, Martin Murray, and my grandfather, Jesse Fife. There's my great-grandmother when she was 90. This was in the Lakeville Journal. This is my great-grandfather when he became postmaster of the Falls Village Post Office. That's his desk. And that's an old weight or scale where you used to put a letter on, see if it was more than, if you needed additional postage. That was the old scale. So the old Methodist church, which is on the top of Battle Hill, they bought and renovated into a two-family home, well, a one-family to start. And my grandmother was, I think, a teenager at the time. And once my great-grandfather was the postmaster, and then my grandmother was the postmaster, and then my mother was the postmaster in Falls Village.
Wow.
So it goes back that far.
They knew everybody.
Oh yes, and everybody knew us. As a teenager growing up, we certainly couldn't get away with anything.
Yeah.
Yes. So we've been here a long time. And the post office was the place back then. You know, it's where everyone gathered in the mornings and chit-chatted, and sometimes the parking lots would be just full of people chatting in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my family's been here, like I said, since the Depression. And anyone who's been here long at all knows my entire family. My dad's family is from Sheffield. Hewins is, and there's a whole street named after them, and there's, I don't know how many Hewenses there are, but more than I could ever count.
Hewins?
Hewins, yeah. And they live on Hewins Street.
Any relation to Marie Hewins?
That's my mom.
Marie Hewins is your mom?
Yes, she is.
Be sure to tell her I said hello.
I will. Now, do you know her from the post office?
Yes.
Yes. So her mom, my grandmother, and my great-grandfather, Martin, were all postmasters there.
Do you have any stories or anecdotes from those years?
Well, I remember when, a couple things. My great-grandma, my grandparents were strong Democrats. And you probably knew, or at least heard of, Pete Lawson, who was a Republican.
Yeah.
And my great-grandmother used to call Pete the code name, and I believe it was either Clarice or Claudia that they would use, because she didn't want anyone to know that she was relying on Pete, a Republican of all things, to assist in town politics or help her with something, or whatever the case may be. They were very much involved in the political scene, but behind the scenes. They didn't hold office, but they were definitely involved. Lots of funny stories and community stories back to when I was a kid.
Tell me about those.
Well, let's see. When I was a kid growing up, we had you know what the daycare center is?
Sure.
Okay, that used to be the Falls Village Rec Center. And parents could drop their kids off there at 8:30, 8:45, and pick them up at 5:15 to 5:30-ish. And we had a full day, every single day. As we got older, we used to ride our bikes down to the rec center. Susan Kelsey and Janice Fitch were the lifeguards and the swim instructors at the time. And there was just something for us to do every single day when there wasn't school. So I think my fondest memories are probably at the Falls Village Rec Center way back then, as I was a kid growing up. Yeah.
You're probably best known as the founder of the Children's Theater.
Yes, an organization that is so close to my heart. The center on Main, the Methodist Church, downtown, we purchased I worked with Bob Nemeth, and him and I went to town fundraising. And by to town, I mean calling and writing. And I think it was within 3 or 4 weeks, we had raised $150,000 to buy the building. And that building contains my heart, my soul, and probably a big chunk of my wallet, but it's worth every minute. The Children's Theater has done so much for so many young performing artists, and performing artists who didn't even know that they were performers until they tried it, And the big thing back then when it started was any child who wanted a part, no matter what show we were doing, if they wanted a part, they would have one. It didn't go to who might have had the best voice or the best acting skills. It's if you'll work and come to practices every weekend and make the commitment, you will have a role in this play. And it worked every year, and we had the most amazing performances. The high school auditorium was always filled, and it was just a remarkable experience.
What were some of the early shows?
The first show was The Wizard of Oz.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I've heard of once in a lullaby.
And the Falls Village Children's Theater started because my daughter Emma loved the performing arts, dancing, singing, and acting. And I would take her all over the place, to New York State, to down south in Connecticut. And I said to the director that she usually worked with, Laney Mitchell, said, "Can't we do this in Falls Village?" And I don't have a theatrical bone in my body. And he said, "Of course we can." I said, "All right, let's do it." He asked me to produce. I said, "I don't know what that means, but give me a list and I'll take it on." I had no idea what I was doing. And I found out later that we chose one of the hardest Broadway shows to put on, was The Wizard of Oz. It was a 147-page script. People were flying, and the Dorothys and the lines, and like 35 kids signed up to be in it, and it was just amazing. And then on our 10-year anniversary, we did it again, but we added flying to it. So Glinda, the Good Witch, actually flew in and landed on stage, and the monkeys flew, and it was amazing. And the Wicked Witch flew. But those are probably my two favorite shows. Guys and Dolls was one of my favorites too, because we brought in the adults, like the dads did the dancing scene in Guys and Dolls. And in Peter Pan, a bunch of the moms were Indians. So we each year got a little more creative. I just loved it. Just loved those shows. They were really spectacular. little kids have gone on to be theater majors in college because of their experience with the children's theater.
Is that right?
Yeah, and kids have come out of their shell and didn't turn into complete extroverts, but came out just less shy. Let's put it that way. I know my daughter Gracie was very shy, and when she was in Cinderella, she had one line, and she had to step forward and say, "And me, I'm in the 2nd grade," and she's been talking ever since.
Great.
So
it's a wonderful experience for kids.
Prince is giving a ball. The prince is giving a ball. The prince is giving a ball. Me, I'm in the 5th grade, and me, I'm in the 2nd grade. The prince is giving a ball. Royal Highness Christopher Rupert, son of Her Majesty Queen Constantine.
My other love are dogs. I've been involved in dog rescue for, over 30 years, actually. And I used to be much more involved than I am right now, but that's also a real big passion of mine, is rescuing dogs. And cats, too. I'm just more of a dog person. But yeah, one time we averaged probably 25 foster dogs. Our barn was converted into kennels, so until they found a home, they were with us. And that was wonderful. That was a great experience, too. We saved a lot of dogs.
You also work for a local bank?
I do. I am a loan officer for Cross Country Mortgage, and my favorite, I've been doing it for about 26 years.
Is that right?
Yes. And my favorite part of that job is helping young families get into a house. Because there's so many programs out there for first-time home buyers, or you don't even have to be a first-time home buyer. And some of them are really beneficial, and some of them aren't as beneficial as they look. So my job is to find the best program for that individual family. And I love doing it. I love finding mortgage products so that young families can move to the northwest corner. Of course, I always try and sell in Falls Village first. But I'm not the real estate agent. But that's a very big part of my life, is working with young families, or any family. They don't even have to be young, to get them to move to the northwest corner. Because it's a beautiful spot. It's a magical place, in my opinion. It really is. There's an enormous amount of culture in this little area. There's so many artists and musicians and crafters and sculptors, and every kind of art you can imagine is right here, if you take the time to look for it.
How has Falls Village changed in the 26 years you've lived here?
Well, in some ways a lot, and in some ways not so much. I still think that the sense of community is here and strong. When our son died in a car accident a couple years ago at the age of 16, and the community support was as it always has been. My brother died in a car accident in 1986, and it was the same level of support, if not more, all those years later.
People brought you dinner
and this is in the height of COVID. So people would leave food on the front door and ring the bell and wave to us from out there. It had just started. It was March of 2020. Everyone was terrified of COVID. And it was the end of March. And they did a parade of cars because we couldn't have a funeral, and there was over 1,000 people that came in these cars. So that's Falls Village. That's the Falls Village I love. You know, you could be in a big city and have 10 times more to do, 1,000 times more things to do. But if your apartment building catches on fire, your next door neighbor might not even know who you are. But in Falls Village, everybody knows who you are when they need you, or when you need them. So
Yeah.
that's a piece that I don't think will ever change. Well, I hope it doesn't ever change.
Yeah.
See, I went away for 20 years. Determined to never come back to little old Falls Village. I was going to go out and see the world. And I did. You know, I traveled and I met my husband. And we were living on Hilton Head Island. We were both working there and having a lot of fun. We got married and I got pregnant with Emma. And we just decided, okay, well, we've had a lot of fun. Now let's go home. And we came right back here.
It's a good place to bring up kids.
It's the perfect place to bring up kids. I do think, every parent that I know of wants their kids to grow up here. It's safe. It's a small community, and you can rely on everyone to help. The idea to come back here was, let's raise our kids here. But at the same time, most parents say, beautiful place to raise your kids, but now you need to go out and see the world. And so we encourage them to fly away for a little bit. If they go to school and get their career and decide they want to come back and do the same thing, perfect. But I think most parents, if not all, encourage their kids that have grown up here to go ahead and see the world a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, my parents took us to, I think it was California. It was a big city, I think it was LA. And I was walking down the street, and I'd never been into a big city like that. I've been to New York a couple times, but so anyway, I was there with some other kids, and a policeman stopped me and asked me to stop jaywalking. And I remember just looking at him saying, I have no idea what that is. And he explained about the crosswalks, and I said, well, we don't have crosswalks where I come from. And we didn't. You know, we have a couple now, but there were no crosswalks in Falls Village. And I'll never forget that story because I was such a country bumpkin. I had no idea what a crosswalk was at the time. I was probably 15-ish, at the time. But it's always good to come back. And I left thinking I would never be back, and here I am.
What are some of the more dramatic episodes that you've witnessed?
Well, there's always been a little bit of drama in Falls Village, at least in my time here. But probably the worst of it was, let me think, I didn't want to come back to Falls Village when we decided to move back from Hilton Head. It's my husband's idea. Because at the time, I would get the Lakeville Journals delivered down in Falls Village, and there was a fight between Falls Villagers in the letters to the editor every single week. I said, see, we can't go back here. It's crazy there. That would have been late 80s, early 90s. And it was all politics. It was all selectmen who didn't get along and townspeople who didn't like this one and that one. And it escalated to a point of almost being comical. But that went away. So that was probably the most dramatic time of my history in Falls Village. There's some of that now, but it's not like that. That was really crazy.
Yeah. What's in all these drawers?
A little bit of everything. But there's photographs and office supplies and old pictures and cards and thank you notes and everything to make Shea stones.
Shea stone, what is that?
Okay, so Shea is my son who died in March 2020. And Shea always had rocks in his pockets. Right until the last load of laundry. And so we decided to do what are called Shea stones. So we paint a rock, so they look like this. And people put them all over the world. And we wrote on the back, if you find, take a picture and send it to us on Instagram or Facebook. And there's, I think, over 400 of them placed all over the world, including Antarctica. More countries than I can count. And they travel. Like someone will find this one. I left one like this in Annapolis, Maryland. And someone found it, took a picture and sent it to us and brought it to Niagara Falls. And then somebody found it in Niagara Falls and brought it to a beach in the state of Washington. So it went all across the country. So they're very special for us. And it's very Shay-like because he loved to travel, and he was very brave and whimsical and daring. And so he would go to Antarctica and hang out with the penguins if he could. So that's what Shay Stones are.
That must have been very hard to lose a son.
Yeah, it's I don't think there are any words that can describe that kind of grief. It doesn't go away. You don't get through it because it's not an it. It's a constant, and it's been 2.5 years, I guess. It'll be 3 years the end of March, and I still wake up every morning and my first thought is of Shay, and my last thought is of Shay. Every day is still a battle.
Yeah.
But we do the best we can. That's all we can do. Your life is forever changed. Well, you'll always regret not having all those years with your child. I try and live the way Shay would have wanted us to live, which is a little more adventurous than I have the courage to be, probably. But he was a very compassionate person, so we try and be compassionate. We try to keep his spirit alive by just being really kind.
Is that his picture up there?
Yes, that's my boy. He was very special. Unbelievable musician. There was nothing he couldn't play. Shay just sat down and played. He played by ear. And he played anything. The ukulele, the guitar, the clarinet, piano, the drums.
No kidding.
He just sat down and did it.
Of course, he had schoolwork to do and
Yes.
at the same time.
And he loved sports. He was an amazing athlete too. So
that
and
right?
always had to balance school, sports, and music.
Looks like you're all ready for Christmas. The house looks beautiful.
Thank you. I love Christmas decorations, and we go to town every year. I grew up in this house. This was the family home. This is a piano that my daughter Gracie refinished, and she hand painted that portrait of my son, and those are the words to the Piano Man. But you see the little cardinals in the tree?
Oh, yeah.
I always look at the cardinals as a sign of my son.
Well, thank you so much, Denise, for doing this.
Oh, you're very welcome. I could talk about Falls Village all day.
Feel free.